Okay. So I think you can see my screen now, and I'm in the environment that you all will see, after your grant agreement has been submitted. That step will release these extra left menus, participants, staff, and so forth. Um, so we've been making updates in the last week or so to make the workflow easier. So if some of you have tried to go through this workflow and it's been a little bit more complicated, I'm going to show you kind of where we're landing with this today, and then ask you to go back and try one more time, and hopefully benefit from the ease of use features that we've been implementing. So, so first, for many of you, when you land on this participants and staff, it's an empty list right now, and what we're all trying to do is to have you roster this list for your current grants. In our demo site, we have some people here, but again, this, for some of you, it's empty. So here are the steps. It is to come up to the add button here, which will bring up this lookup participant page. And this is designed to look across your previously registered youth from earlier years, mostly from 22, 23. I think those sites are continuous, but the point is that anyone you've already registered to your organization previously should be accessible here. And the quickest way to look at that list is just to not enter any search criteria and just hit search, which will essentially search for everything. And as I do this, what this list is that's coming up here is, everybody who's in the sites from 22, 23 and before. This ability to just globally search without any criteria was just recently added. So for those of you who say, yeah, we haven't, our participants haven't been brought forward, please go to this page, hit that search with no criteria, and see what comes back in the list. If this list is still empty, then there's been an issue with us connecting to your prior sites, but I think we've got them almost all correct. There's no, they all should be done correctly. So this will be the first step. Shanna, should I stop for questions or just keep going and you'll interrupt me if there's something we should double back on? Shanna, can you hear me? Why am I?
My apologies. I was still on mute.
Okay.
Go ahead and push through, and we'll do Q&A at the end, or folks can put their questions in the chat, and I will respond as we go, and I'll interrupt if needed.
Okay. So, assuming you're here and you are seeing your previously registered youth, it is a matter of just clicking on the word register for any that you want to bring into your new grant. And this view record here represents the ones you've already brought in. So I've already brought in some, but say if I want to bring in Andrew Adams, I just hit register. It will essentially, again, bring them from your historic registrations into the new environment. This is the prior data that you would have entered for this individual, not much here. And then you'll just need to fill out the rest of the required fields, whatever's left, and then hit save and submit. There's a little too much here that's empty for me to fill it out now, but so that's the step, is just, okay, I brought somebody in, I want to make sure all the data that's currently being required is here. Hopefully you've already entered most of it.
YouTube might also now terminate their channel because YouTube.
So that's, and then so you're done with that individual, you just come back and essentially repeat the process, search, go to the next person and just one by one bring them in. And as you're bringing them in, you'll want to make sure that all the required data for this current year is being entered, and you'll submit. I'll just bring in one more person here. Here we go again. Fill out the required data, and slowly you will bring up. As you can see, this list is growing as I bring them in. There are some that are submitted because all the required data for 23, 24 has been entered, and others are unsubmitted. One more thing I want to point out here is that if you have very large lists of historic youth, this supports partial searching. So if I just type in the letter S here, it's going to search for anybody whose last name starts with S. So you don't need to bring back every youth. And the more you type in here, the more, isolated your results. So quick way, this is just a quick way for you to search by entering initials or partial strings. It's going to bring you back the matching records. The next thing to point out is that this is also the interface for you to manually add new participants. And right now, and the rule is that as long as you've entered a search result that returns matching records, the system's not going to let you create a new record because you haven't entered information for first name, last name, and date of birth that's unique. And it's only when you enter search criteria that result in no matches that we would let you create a new record. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I'll do a Joe Doe, which I don't think exists. And if you search for that, there are no Joe Does in the historic record for the agency, and that allows me to see this click here to add new person. I'll do that, and now I get my add youth screen, this is the minimum data required to enter a youth into the system. So if you can't answer this information as of right now, you're going to have to cancel out and come back later when you do have the information. But I'll just go ahead and make this up real quick. We could pre-populate that value if it's helpful. I don't know, but just you can see here, even race and ethnicity are here, but they're not required. So if you did want to leave those empty, you could. Gender is required. So once you've put in this minimum data, you're able to continue to the add. And what this does is it adds the complete record. Now there are additional required fields for the youth that were not necessary to create the record. And you'll see those here, the things like the SAO consents, the FERPA consents. The idea is that you may not know the answers to these at the time that you're creating the record, so you're able to create it without this and double back later. But in the end, when you hit save on this record, it's going to tell you what it's still missing. And it'll save the record, but it's just going to alert you. And so now I'm going to go through and populate these last bits of data. And
Mark, what happens if you choose a school and it was the wrong school? We had a question in regards to that. They should be able to just go in and edit the record and change the school name, correct?
That's correct. So I'm going to hit save here. Oh, I still have one more thing that I didn't answer, which is the SAO consent. I'll say yes here. Save. Everything is in place. I'm not getting any more red validation. I'm now able to submit, and this turns this into a read-only form. And now if I go to the left menu and look at Joe Doe, I have a submitted record. At this point, though, if I need to change anything, it's just a matter of going back to the record, hitting unlock, navigating, like you said, back to the school name. I can change that, save it, resubmit, and everything has been updated. So.
Okay,
Quick
so
question, Mark. Don't you need a finished participant record in order to generate the SAO consent stuff that has to happen? Like, how can you put in SAO when you're entering the record if you need to have the record entered to get the SAO questionnaire? I'm a little confused.
I can take that, Mark.
Okay, good. Yep.
Yeah, so this is
wait.
You have to.
You're not
Just a reminder.
Cassette.
I'm sorry, just a reminder to go on mute, please, if you're not speaking. So this is for SAO consent. If you recall from our orientation, parents have to provide consent, FERPA consent and SAO consent, and we ask that you include that on your enrollment forms, because you should not be administering SAO unless you have SAO consent signed by your parent. And so here is where you're saying that, one, you have FERPA consent to be able to obtain data, and then two, that you have SAO consent, or you have consent from the parent or guardian to administer the survey to their child. And so if you say yes, later when Mark shows us how to administer the SAO survey through CitySpan, you will only see the list of students that you have indicated you have SAO consent for. If you do not indicate that here, you will not be able to receive a link to administer the SAO survey. Correct, Mark?
That's right. Yep. So yeah, this record needs to be in place with SAO consent. What? Yes. And then we'll get to the SAO workflow in a second, but that essentially completes the registration. And again, it's just a matter of adding one at a time from your prior records to get your current grant year rostered. And then I showed you as well, when you don't have a prior record, you'll get that link to create the new record. Hope that's not too difficult. We've tried to make it as simple as we can because this is a lot of work overall. So now we're here.
I'm sorry, Mark, if I can just, because I see several questions and I want to just make sure everyone hears this. If there are schools that are not listed in the dropdown that your students attend, we have been adding schools. Just send an email to the Learn24 data@dc.gov, and I have responded in the chat with this as well. To provide those lists of schools, we just need to check that it's a DC school and that it serves K through 12 youth. And once we confirm that, then we work with CitySpan to get those schools updated in the list of drop down. I know some of the private schools, for example, and maybe some Montessori and charter schools may be missing from that list. So please do send those over to Learn24 data@dc.gov and we will get them added. We did also add a homeschool option so that if you have students that are being homeschooled, you can select that. Thank you, Mark.
No problem. And this is a long list. The only really assistance we give you is that if you click the first initial of your desired choice, it will cycle. I just cycle through the H's to find homeschool. So I know I think there's been some calls to say, "Wow, can we get some help navigating the list?" And that's really what you would do, is hit the H as many times as you need to. So. Any other questions about that workflow? Okay. If not, I'll continue on to two more things, which is setting up activities and taking attendance, and then the SAO itself. One thing I'll point out is that you can see the list of people that are now, rostered into your current year. If I click on the SAO, that list is shorter. This is about 6 people, and your participant roster is quite a bit longer. And in addition to what Shanna said, like, you need to have SAO consent. Yes. The other thing that's required for the youth to show up on this list is that they have to have an attendance record within the last 365 days. So that's the two things are driving what's here. And so what I'll show you next is the steps for setting up the activity and taking attendance so that you can get somebody onto this list. I'm not looking at the questions, so I'm just going to keep going and you can stop me. So in prior office hours and trainings, we had gone through the steps for setting up activities, enrolling, taking attendance, and Shanna asked me to just run through it one more time because there's some people that might be new or people might have questions. So I'll do that. I don't think it's going to take too long. So again, to enter attendance, you're going to click on the Sites left menu. And for those of you who only put one site into your grant agreement, you'll just see one. But if you had multiple sites, you'll see them all listed out here. Again, it should reflect exactly what's in your grant agreement. You're going to pick the site that you're going to be setting up the activity in. I'll just pick site 1 here. And then once you do that, everything at this point is within the context of site 1. And you'll always see in the lists here the location. It'll always say site 1 for site 1. I'll just go real quick here. And for site 2, it'll always say site 2. So you'll know where you are. And probably there's one person entering this for site 1 and a different one for site 2, but that's how it's kept separate. So then we already have some activities here, but I'll just go through the process of adding one more real quick. So I need to add one more activity, and I'll just fill out these, you can call this the math club or something like that, however you want to do it. I'm just going to enter a bunch of dummy data here. Again, following the red asterisk, because these are the things that are required. And other things that don't have the asterisks can be ignored. And here, this actually we need to get an asterisk here because there is a minimum selection there. And number of anticipated participants, that's it. So for those of you who've used this in prior years, this form used to be 3 times as long, and we've done a lot to reduce the questions to make this a little quicker. So there it is, it's filled out. I'll hit save and return. And now my math club activity is showing up here. The next step is to just select it and give it a schedule. So at the top here, you can see that schedule link. I'll just click that. There is no schedule. I'm going to add my dates. And for this, I'll say this is a multiple date schedule. If it's just a single day event, you'd hit single, but if you're scheduling for multiple dates, you'll click that. I'll just say I want this to start beginning of November and run through some date in February. Very flexible what you enter here. And I'll say this is going to be a Wednesday, Friday event. And therefore it's asking me what the start and end times are for Wednesday and Friday. And I'll just say this is going to be 3 to 5. And this is also going to be 3 to 5. Once I've keyed all that in, I'll just hit add dates and the system will generate all the Wednesdays and Fridays. You can see that here. At this point, if you want to, if there's some holidays and so forth, you can click on these dates and delete them if you want. You can always go back and add more dates if there's some you forgot. So this is pretty flexible, but essentially this is your schedule for the activity. And when I click back to program info now, you can see I've got my math club, I've got my descriptions, and now I have a schedule. The next step is to start enrolling youth, and I'll click enrollment up here. Nobody's enrolled. It's just a matter of clicking the enroll button here. And I can start searching by name and so forth, or even by grade level, but you just want to look at everybody who's active in your site, show all. And this is everyone who has a submitted, should be everyone who has a submitted plan application. I'll just start clicking through the people that I want to enroll. And it's just a matter of clicking enroll. It says, okay, you scheduled the activity to start November 1. Are they all actually going to start November 1? I might say, yes, they all. But if I know, say that Susan here is going to start a couple weeks late, I might change her enroll date. And all that means is that it's going to take her off the attendance records until the date that she was supposed to start. So I'll do that. Proceed. It's just saying, okay, they were all successfully enrolled. If any of them were enrolled in conflicting activities, this page would have shown you those scheduling conflicts, and you would have the choice to either ignore the conflict and put the person in the club or not enroll them at that point. But here I've successfully enrolled 3 people. I'll go back to my enrollment list and I can see them now. They're here in the math club. I can continue adding more people if I want. But at this point, I'm ready to start taking attendance. So to do that, you're just going to click the attendance link at the top. By default, it shows you all of the empty attendance dates prior to today, which is just 3. But using this drop down, you can kind of look at your whole schedule, and you can get to every date. But by only showing you the empty through today, it's just showing you what we think you should be entering attendance for. So. Now, one other thing to point out is that because I indicated that one person was going to start later, there's only 2 people to mark attending, but starting on the 15th, that 3rd person is going to show up on the attendance rolls. So I'll click in here. We have these 2 individuals. It's just a matter of present, and hitting return. And moving on, I'll go to the 15th and I'll see that 3rd person show up. All present is a quick way to make everyone present. Maybe if someone was absent, and save and return. And now you can see here the attendance that you've been entering. So that's the workflow for, again, setting up these activities. Shannon, if you want to comment, there's always the question of to what level of detail does this need to be?
Yeah, if you can give the example of general attendance, that would be great.
Yeah. So we know that some people don't want to track attendance by these distinct activities. They just want one activity called general attendance where they're going to enroll everybody here and do the attendance. And that's, Shannon, I think that's fine from your perspective if it's just all grouped together.
That is correct. We are giving the option of you doing it by activity so that you are able to see how many hours did youth participate in STEM? How many hours did they participate in homework help? Etc. And that's really something that, you know, if you're a 21st century grantee or you have other funding streams, or to help you with fundraising, you can provide that data that says, you know, we provide so many hours of programming to our youth each year in these categories. Some organizations really like to have that, and some just want a general attendance. This is how many days and hours our youth attended. So that's where you'll use the general attendance. We do not require you to report on any particular hours per activity, so it is really up to you to use this to the detail that you prefer.
And if you decide to use general attendance, you know, you're going to put every youth here. If you create additional activities and also enroll the youth in those, they won't be double counted in any reporting. So there's nothing preventing you from cross enrolling youth into different activities, because when we go to report on, you know, average daily attendance, it's all going to be deduplicated per day per youth.
I think we have a question. Tacharna, can you come off mute and ask your question, please? Tacharna, we don't hear you. I'm not sure. Maybe just type it in the chat. Oh, there you go.
I'm raising my hand instead of coming off mute. Okay, sorry. So I have two questions. One, because I'm kind of confused. So if we do the attendance by activity, and we know like certain students aren't. So if I have art and I have beginners, right? But I know that certain students aren't coming to beginners because they have basketball. Do we not enroll? Do we only enroll them in art? Or do we need to have enrolled all? If our number that we're supposed to meet is 60, does each activity have to have that minimum number, or do all the activities together just have to add up to that minimum number of students served?
So I believe, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but as long as they attend any activity during that day, they will be counted as in attendance for the day. They do not have to attend all activities. Is that correct, Mark?
That's right. Yep.
Does that answer your question, Tacharna?
Yes and no. So I think that even like the way that this is set up, certain activities are on certain days. So let's say that I'll give me for example. So if we do art and business on Monday, and then on Tuesday we do STEM and financial literacy, right? But I know certain students are only coming to the art activity. They're not coming to the financial literacy, which is on a separate day on a Tuesday. And I know we have a an average attendance thing per, like, who attended per week. But for if I have a specific activity for Monday that I enroll, let's say the number is 60 students we're supposed to have, I enroll 60 students in. But the activity for Tuesday, I know only 35 of our students are actually coming to that activity. Based off of just having conversations with them, do I enroll just the 35, or do I have to enroll the full 60 in that Tuesday activity?
I think that's really a preference. I would assume it, Mark, because they only have to attend once a week to meet the average weekly attendance minimum of 85% to count towards that. But if they want to enroll them in that, or just enroll the ones that they know are attending, is that just a personal preference, or do you have a recommendation, Mark?
It's whatever the user wants to do.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, whatever's easiest for you to manage, Tacharna. It is not required.
Yeah.
So basically, if as long as each of the 60 participants are enrolled in at least one of the activities that happen at least once a week and attend, then that number will be taken and counted towards the percentage, correct? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yes, they have to be those hours. You have the minimum hours of services available. They have to be available to all of your students, that minimum number of hours. But if they're not attending because they have other activities, like, that it is not required that they attend all those hours, as long as they're just made available to them.
But they don't have to be enrolled in all of the activities.
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
for reporting purposes, that's not going to matter. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, Mark, I think we can keep rolling.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to show you is the SAOY, which is this left menu here. I know some of you have been trying to use this tool prior to this week, and unfortunately, it wasn't ready to be used. And I think we were trying to message that out, but as of today, it is ready to be used. And so we want to go through the workflow. So you have this left menu. Again, as I mentioned, the youth that'll show up here are the ones who have attendance within the last year and also have SAO consent marked as yes. The way that this is designed to work is that you will somehow distribute the link to the youth that you see here. And there's a few ways of doing that. Well, there's many ways. I mean, the flexibility is up to you, whether you're going to cut and paste this into a text message and text the youth, or email it to them, or maybe, like a computer lab setting, you would, put them at a computer and paste this into the URL. But one way or another, this URL needs to be copied and pasted. So I'll just show you that real quick here. So we have John Washington, who has not taken the SAO yet. And I'll just copy this link. I'm going to bring in an empty browser here and just paste that link in. I think you can see my screen, and now this is, again, what the student will see when they go to take the survey. It's just a very isolated environment. First question is, are you John? And if they say no and hit next, it'll just say, thank you. This isn't for you. But assuming it was given to the right youth, they'll first confirm that, yes, I am John Washington. And then we're asking them also to indicate the type. We probably could remove this, but we used to have the SAO reading and SAO math. But anyway, they're just going to have to click this SAOY for now. We might remove that selection and hit next. But it's too simple, yes. And then once they hit next, the entire survey instrument will appear. One thing to note is that this has been designed to adapt to a cell phone. So if you're distributing on phones, this should collapse properly to allow it to be used from a phone. But here we are on the browser. A couple things to note: there is a language translation, so if the user wants to switch to a different language, they can. And then otherwise, it's just a matter of coming through and answering these questions. The
magenta, right?
Yeah. I'll actually show you the language translation real quick here. So this is just what it looks like translated into Spanish and then back into English. So it's just on the fly. It doesn't delete data. So if you're working with youth and you want to switch languages, just pick one. It won't remove any data, but it will switch the language that they see. So just to remind you, the rules on this is that there's no minimum required data to submit this. So if they answer only one question, it'll still be submittable. But of course, the goal is to have them answer as many of these as they can. But I'm not going to answer every one of them, but it is a matter of just answering the questions, going to the bottom, and when they're done, hitting submit. At one point, we'd had the submit button at the top here, but I think on your side, they asked that it be at the bottom so that youth are kind of forced to look at all the questions. But once they've filled out as much of it as they can or want to, they will have this submit button, and it just, upon hitting submit, it just gives them this little thank you message. I think we're going to make this a lot bigger, but that completes the survey. And then coming back here, John Washington, was showing as no latest date, no latest type. But now if I refresh this list, you can see from your side, you can see that this youth actually did take the test on that day and that it was the SAOY.
So a couple reminders. SAOY survey is to be conducted by all participants, 4th grade or above, 4th through 12th grade, in your program within 6 weeks of the start date. I know some folks started before the October 1 program date. You do not have to worry about that. That isn't included. For the sake of this grant and the requirements, program did not start before Monday, October 2nd. And so we're still, hitting right up on 6 weeks. So you want to make sure your youth are enrolled and then get this. We would like everyone to have this done before Thanksgiving break. For that's your beginning of the year SAO, which your student survey. You will need to then conduct the survey with your youth, 4th grade through 12th grade, again in the last 4 weeks of program year. And so we ask you to remember to do that. We will also be sending out reminders. So I wanted to just point that out. And I think Mark, who is one of our GMSs, Mark Weinberger, who also used to serve as a representative leading a program that received a Learn24 grant, has provided some important feedback that, from his experience, that it is it's advantageous to just kind of have a laptop set up or a tablet set up where 1 or 2 or 3 or how many you have available to just kind of set those, pull up the URLs and have it ready and then just circulate the youth through 1 at a time or 3 at a time to be able to complete that.
One thing to note though is if you take this URL and put it into your existing browser window right here, it's going to log you out of this environment and then just authenticate you or essentially recognize you as this person. So if you're doing that with a laptop, like I did, bring up a separate browser window. Like if you're using Chrome for this, maybe launch Safari and do it in the, because otherwise, if you just, again, if you just post that right in here, it's going to log you out and bring up the survey. So
I see another statement I want to address here. I think folks are a little concerned about the 6 weeks. And so the question is, if we're not able to add our participants, then they're concerned about being able to hit that kind of internal deadline of doing it by the fall break. And so you should be able to add your participants as long as you have signed your grant agreement. It does not have to be fully executed. As long as you've signed the grant agreement, that locks in the sites that the students have to be attached to, then you can go ahead and start adding your participants. Now, I'm going to ask Mark to speak to the bulk upload because the bulk upload should be ready by next Friday, November 17th. I know that with that not being available for those who are waiting for that bulk upload. And if you don't have programming the following week or with only a couple days of programming, it does cut it pretty short. So we will allow some flexibility. We're not trying to, make this impossible for anyone. We just want it to be as soon as possible as these kids. It's kind of a beginning of the year survey. So we'll allow flexibility there, but just kind of like the internal deadline. If you've already got your youth enrolled in the participant profiles, let's try to get it done by fall break. If you're waiting for that bulk upload, of course, we'll give you a little time to get that in, but as soon as possible, really.
So before I go to the uploads, I just want to make a few more points about the SAO. One is, as you probably all know, this is all you get to see about the SAO results. Under the design of the SAO and the people who created it, the results are only shared with Learn24 for evaluation, and there's no way for you to see what the youth said in their replies. The other thing is that these SEOs can be administered over and over again. So even though I just completed this one for John Doe, if I were to take this link and repeat the process, it's going to create a brand new survey for that person. And when they submit it, it'll just be another instance of the survey for the youth. And so, you know, there's various reasons why you'd want the youth to take it more than once. Like, for example, if they took it once and you realize, they, you know, looks like they only filled out 2 answers and they just kind of didn't have time for the rest, you could, you know, administer it again, and this time urge them to be more complete. And we would have both copies, and this latest date would show the last date on which they submitted another one. But there's no limit to the number of surveys that any one youth can fill out using the same link.
I have one more question I want to address, just because I think this will apply to more than one person. If you're doing the series dosage, the students should be the same students throughout the year, right? Because you have to meet the minimum number of hours throughout the year, but you may start like your fall, then your winter and spring. If your fall has already ended, just as soon as they start the next session, go ahead. It will allow a little flexibility there if you're kind of in between. Say you did a fall session and you won't start again until, you know, December or January. As long as that meets the minimum hours, you can go ahead and do the beginning of the year then, because obviously if you don't have students in the program, you can't do it currently. And also for any new students that start throughout the year, as we know that out of school time is rolling, in attendance, you can always have a student, if they joined in February, you can have them do a beginning of the year survey then, and then they'll take it again at the end to see if there's any difference in their response to the program. And I know we're coming right up on time. So there was a question in the chat, Mark, around adding staff. So if you don't mind just running through that real quick for anyone who is still in the process of adding staff.
Sure. So that will be back here. When you log in, you'll see your grant agreement and the staff module. And for those of you eventually that'll have funding in multiple categories, you'll toggle here and you'll see that particular grant. But by selecting the staff module, it'll take you to a list of staff that you have. And if you're needing to add someone new, it's just hitting the add button here. And the same thing, there's minimum data to enter somebody who's new, and we do a duplicate check here. So if you enter this, all 3 are required, and if we find that you've entered somebody who already exists, we're going to show you that record and not let you create the duplicate. So I'll hit add here. Of course, this is unique, and that creates the starting point for filling out the staff form and submitting all the required clearances. Shannon, is that enough of an answer, or do we need to get into this a little bit deeper?
If anybody has additional questions around staff or any component of this, feel free to come off a chat. And by any component, I mean any component of what's been gone over today or that you've been asked to do in City Span.
This is Bonnie, will they then show up in the program listing?
Yeah, good question. So no, they only show up. So to do that, you'll have to then, so this is registering staff to your agency and not to one program. To assign them to the program, you would hit assignments here. And this is where you'll need to, if you have multiple grants, you'll need to click it here. So John Frank, I'm going to assign him to my sample OST, which we've been looking at, and just hit the button here. He's now assigned there. So what it means is now when I go back to my actual grant and click participants and staff and click staff up here, it's a little bit hidden, but hopefully once you know it's here, you'll see John Frank here. is now in my staff roster for my grant. But had I not gone through that assignment step, this row wouldn't show up here under the grant. That's a little tricky, but you can imagine all the things we're trying to track here, these organization level staff that are cleared at the org level, but then this is how you push them into your grants. And once they're here, when you go, if you want to go all the way through with it and are setting up activities, you can now assign staff. This is an optional step, but for your own tracking, if you wanted to assign staff, then here's let's see, where is right here, this person's now available to be assigned to the activity itself. I come back here, so that it's shown. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hit this. Let me look at that one more time. It didn't quite do what I thought it was going to do. 1, 2, save and return. Oh, there it is. I hit the cancel rather than save and return. So there it is. So that's the full workflow of, again, adding to your org, assigning to the grant, and then if you want to, the last step is which is assigning staff to your activities.
There was a question around entering attendance. As a reminder that is done weekly, and how often the information is being reviewed in CitySpan. So this was a great question because we are in the process. I want to make sure everyone understands there will be no program report for Q1. The next or the first program report will be due at the end of Q2, which the end of Q2 is January 26th. So that following Monday, the 29th, and we allow 4 weeks for completion of that. So that's when your first program report will be due. But we are in the process of working with CitySpan to make a program progress report that is automated. So all of the compliancy information is automated into a progress report that will say, here's your proposed number of youth. This is your actual enrollment. This is the proposed targeted population. Say you said you would serve 50% at risk. This is your actual, once we get the data from OSSI and DCPS. But this is the required average weekly attendance is 85%. This is your actual weekly attendance. All of that information will be a automated progress report for you to review. You're not having to go in and enter, how many students are served. It will come from the information that is entered into CitySpan. So that's why it's very important to make sure all your information is indeed entered. I see a hand up. Let me go and look and see who that is. Jessica, if you want to come off mute.
Hi, yes. I just had a question on the participant information. I noticed that there wasn't a field for the unique ID, and typically we would add that number ourselves because it related to the attendance upload that we would later do. Are we still able to add in our own unique ID so that we can do our attendance to the upload function? Because again, we use a different number than the auto generate number.
Sure. In fact, this auto generate button shouldn't be here. So you're right. In the past, when we supported the uploads, we relied on an ID, and it can either be an ID that you provide because it's coming out of some other system you're running, or it's an ID that we generate for you. That created a lot of problems in the past where the IDs would get crossed up or just mixed up, and it would often result in a lot of duplicate records being created. The thought for this upload that we're developing is that we'll use the first name, last name, and date of birth as the key, as the ID itself, and that'll replace the ID that you provide or that you get from us. It's not clear necessarily that that's the better approach. We think it is, but I wish we had more time to talk about that today, because I'm sure you have thoughts on which is going to be a better approach. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we're running out of time, and I do want to talk about. So we are developing an upload. It's going to be a template that you receive that's got all the columns laid out, and it'll be your job to populate the template the way we've laid it out. There'll be an extra left menu here called uploads when it's ready, and you'll click on that left menu, and it'll be an interface to say, okay, submit your file. And when you do, we're going to validate it. We're going to make sure that all the required information is there. And then again, the required is going to be limited to what we saw on that ad page. So we're not going to require, that you upload your SAO consents, your FERPAs. It's going to be that minimum set of data. The tool will kick back records that fail validation. So if you've entered something in your sheet that doesn't match, like you've entered a gender that doesn't match the genders that we've laid out in the dictionary, it'll kick back that row and say, fix this gender. So that's what we're getting ready. When we do release it, there'll be documentation that you can read through. So hopefully it will be somewhat clear as to how to set it up and what to expect. But the key to this working well for you and for us is that the names and the date of births need to be really consistent. So if you have pre-existing youth and yet you're preparing a new file of youth to upload, if for some reason the previously registered youth, they have a slightly different spelling of their name, any of this that might be slightly off for the same youth is going to create a duplicate record, and that's the unavoidable but unfortunate, result of supporting uploads is that often we end up with duplicates. So, I know we'll be revisiting the subject of uploads, but I think we're almost out of time, and that's just to say that we will be releasing this tool.
Yeah. So yes, we will be releasing the tool, and I believe we talked about doing like a short video to demonstrate how to use the tool that we can provide along with the tool, or shortly after. We can always invite CitySpan to one of the Learn24 data office hours. So I want to make sure everyone is aware, in addition to these Learn24 office hours that happen monthly, the second Thursday of every month, the data team is currently holding data office hours are open time for you to stop by with your personal CitySpan data questions that can be troubleshooted on in real time, and technical support provided, and that is every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. If you do not have that information, reach out to your grant management specialist and they can provide the link so that you can always drop in and have data analysts walk through CitySpan issues with you to help ensure that you have the direction that you need. You can, again, always email the data team at learn24data@dc.gov. And yeah, that's that. I do want to address one question, Jessica. This is news to me. So there was the question posed that can a student decide that they do not want to do the survey? The consent is provided by the parent. And so let me loop back on that. I want to talk to leadership because I don't understand. And if anyone has additional background information on that, where a student was allowed to determine if they wanted to do the survey, we really do want, as long as the parent has provided consent, the youth to complete those surveys, because this is how we capture youth voice. And I know in the past. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, my memory's a little foggy, but I remember in the preparation for doing it in the past, there was like a little paragraph that we had to read before administering the survey, and in that it was like the youth we were like, do you all want to do it? It was like a little script that we had, and it asked the question if they wanted to take the survey, and we highly encouraged it. And for the most part, everyone said yes, but every once in a while a student would say, no, I don't want to. And that's what I'm referring to. And maybe that paragraph isn't something we have to do anymore. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me now. I just remember it from like last year and the years before. It was like in the guidebook, I think we had to like read this little paragraph before giving the survey, and it gave the student the option to decline, basically. But if that's not part of what we have to do, then maybe it's not an issue.
Okay. So yeah, let's look into that. I think I understand that the language in the guidebook was the parent consent, but I could be wrong, and I'm still new to this, so let me look into that, and I will certainly provide guidance.
It looks like someone just put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Script below asks, today we will need your help. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, is everyone okay with this? I mean, at the end of the day, this is about youth voice, right? And we certainly want them to opt into it, and not feel forced to share their opinions. And if you want to utilize this, I'm just thinking out loud as I had not seen this before. We'll provide guidance. Let me get a chance to take a look and read through this, and we'll provide guidance out to everyone in regards to this.
And Shanna, I can speak to this paragraph
please.
here. This is excerpted from the 21-22 SAOI user guide, which was utilized a bit last year, but it was not up. It's somehow searchable online, but I do have a copy of it. So it's good that everyone's bringing this to our attention, because of course we don't want to trouble the youth and make anyone feel uncomfortable that they're being forced to do something. But needless to say, we can discuss the format. But there is a SAOI user guidebook that can be updated, actually. So it's good that everyone brought this to our attention.
Yeah, definitely. And one last thing I want to share, in previous years, well, let me just say, in future years, and this year and future years, we intend to do a much better job of using the data to drive decision making. And so we will be looking at the results of SAO. We will be looking at the number of youth that completed it and what it says. And we will be working with you and offering opportunities to really look at the feedback of your site visits. In the past, you didn't receive your full summary of your site visit, not just a summary, but the details. We will be providing that. We will be providing the summary of the SAO reports. They will not be disaggregated because it's anonymous, but and we will be providing tools for how to look at it in a way to also look at best practices and continuous improvement for improving programming in general to the youth. So these are just important tools to make sure that we're offering the best services that we can as a district across programming for our youth. So I want to thank Mark for being here again, and everything that City Span is doing to move us all into the 21st century, so that not only Learn24, but each of your programs can use the data in important ways. So thank you everyone for being here. Follow up, Learn24 data, putting it in the chat again at dc.gov. If you have any questions in regards to City Span, and remember to follow up with your GMS if you do want access and do not have it to those office hours that take place every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. if you need technical support. And with that, we will bid you adieu. Have a happy weekend, and we will be in touch soon.